So this is
There you go. Okay, wonderful.
awesome. So today's presentation is Network Like a Boss. It's part of a series that I'm doing. And welcome. It was good to connect with all of you a little before this started. And I hope you're all doing well, keeping safe. So networking, this is a big, it's a big part of the job search process, a big part of the career process, and we hear that we need to network all the time. This is, the advice we get. So, today what we'll be talking about are the challenges of networking, because so many people feel that it's very challenging. And what exactly is networking? And we'll be talking about the old model, new model. I see I didn't update the agenda, but the old model and versus the new model. And then networking at events. And also we'll be talking about when networking is effortless. So let's get started. So what are your biggest challenges in terms of networking? So we'll use the chat box and let me know, what are your biggest challenges when it comes to networking? And Greg, if you can just keep track of these so that make sure you address them as well.
Yep.
I'm an introvert. Okay, Gail. So what does that mean, Gail, that you're an introvert when it comes to networking? Keeping the conversation going, making an introduction. And why is that difficult? Sydney, why is making introduction difficult? Carlisa, Tom, introducing myself cold to strangers. What else? What makes networking challenging for you? Keeping the connection after the first meeting, so following up. Yeah, so introvert, following up. I'm just writing these down. Following up, cold introduction. Yeah, keeping the conversation going. Keeping the connection, yeah. Anything else in terms of challenges of networking? And Gail, I'd like to hear what you meant by I'm an introvert and how does that affect your affect networking? So these are actually very common in terms of what I hear as well. Going up to an event, say for example, and introducing yourself. So asking network for introduction to someone else. And why is that hard, Niels? So I want you to think a little bit deeper in terms of why this so feels like an imposition. Why these specific things are challenges for you? So just a statistics, 85% of jobs are filled through referrals. So 85% of jobs being filled through referrals means networking is very important, right, in the career process. It means that your contacts are going to recommend you for a job, and if they do, the likelihood of you getting that job is actually higher than you putting an application in. So this is why networking is so important, and this is why networking has become such a big thing in the career process, and why everybody talks about networking, right? So what is networking? Because your definition of what networking is going to determine how you approach networking. So what is networking? What's your definition of networking? So you can type in the chat box, let me know what your definition of networking is. Meeting other people. Working the room at an event. Okay. Yeah, so you can see based on that definition, working the room at an event, Gail, why it would be difficult for an introvert, right? Because this is not your style. If as an introvert, this might not necessarily be the way that you prefer to network. meeting and staying in touch with professionals you didn't know before. So Niels, so also Greg, if you can just keep track of these for me. Meeting and staying in touch with professionals you didn't meet before, making professional contacts and sharing info and thoughts. Okay. Yep. Schmoozing with people. Yeah. So when you actually write these definitions and put them out there, how do they feel to you? How, like, what comes up for you as when you type these things? Working the room at an event, Gail, what does that bring up for you? Or meeting and staying in touch with professionals you didn't know before, what does that bring up for you, Niels? And Tom, making professional contacts and sharing info and thoughts, how does that feel for you? And same, Sydney, in terms of schmoozing, how does that feel? It's a lot of work. And who wants to do a lot of work? Uncomfortable, don't like selling myself. A bit of anxiety, yeah. Yes, you can see why networking causes so much anxiety for people, and why it's, you know, they would prefer not to do it if this is the way if their definition of networking feels so uncomfortable, if their definition of networking induces anxiety. So what you want to start to notice is your awareness of how you're defining networking, because that really affects the action that you take. So networking is not a forced activity you do when you need a job, right? And I think this is the definition we have been sold, that networking is something you do when you need a job. It's really an old, outdated model based on a mindset of lack. It's, I want something, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to events and I'm going to, you know, cold call people, and I'm going to, you know, have these conversations that I really don't care about, because I want something from someone. And it's also a model where the value and worth are placed on the job and the career. So that becomes the valuable thing that you're going after. So it's a lot of times it means that you have to show up and do things that are not in your nature, like Gail, for example, like selling yourself, right? Where you're showing up and you're working a room and selling yourself, and that's not who you are. Based on what you're saying in this in the chat box, that's not who you are. So you can see how this can really cause you to feel like you're not being yourself, and that's where a lot of the discomfort is coming from, because there's that disconnection there, right? So that's what networking is not, but this is what most people think networking is. It's a forced activity where you go and, you know, you play in this little sandbox and you put on your little performance and you say things that you want to say and you talk to people who you should talk to, and then you leave, and, you know, either you don't ever want to go back to a networking event, or, you know, you don't really have any interest in following up, but, you know, this is what you have to do based on the formula that we are all sold. What networking is, it's building genuine relationships based on common ground. It's based on an eagerness to learn and grow. It's based on an enthusiasm to add value. It's really an intentional process, and it's a habit. It's not something that we do just by going to events. It's something that we do on a daily basis, right? And the mindset here is that you are the valuable thing. It's not the thing that, you know, the job or the something outside, or that relationship even outside of you is valuable. What is valuable here is you are valuable. And in order to show that value to others, you need to be visible. And visible does not necessarily only mean going to events, but visible means, you know, how do you show up, even one-to-one, right? How do you and let people know that you exist and that you can serve them? And that can be done in many different ways. So you have to find the flavor that works for you. So how does that sound compared to the definition that you had earlier of what networking is? How does this feel to you? So you can type in the chat box, let me know. if this is what networking is, where gives you a better focus, Sydney. If networking is where you can do it, based on your own style, based on what works for you, you're connecting with people, you're, talking about things that you care about, one-on-one, like LinkedIn, I'm comfortable with that. Okay, Gail. And if it's just an intentional process, it's like something that you do because you show up and you add value. Sounds good. But making it a habit is not something I've been doing. Yeah, Tom. Yeah, and I totally get that, Tom. So, when I was I got my MBA from Baruch, and when I was actually getting my MBA from Baruch, I had many friends who were also getting their master's degree, and we would go and we would socialize in the graduate clubs, and I also used to work in the computer lab at Baruch, and students would come and I would help them, and I would just talk to them and just be friendly with them and all of that. And I remember in one of my classes, somebody that actually I had gotten to know outside of class as well. And when an internship opened up at the job that he was at, he actually reached out to me and he said, hey, I know based on the conversations we've had, there's this internship that's available. Are you interested? At that time, like I wasn't setting out to have a relationship with him to find a job. It was just that we were connecting, as students of Baruch, and we had common interests and everything else. And I ended up getting that internship. When I actually was graduating from Baruch, there was another student who would come to the computer lab, and we would chat and everything else. And then he knew what I wanted to do and all of that. And then one day he asked me for my resume, and ended up turning it into HR at a bank, and got the call for the interview, and basically I ended up with the role. And the same thing happened in undergrad, where I had professors who were recommending me for jobs and all of that. But it wasn't never that I set out to get a job. It was never that I actually created these opportunities to get a job. It was actually people I knew. And even this can also be true in the social setting. Like networking is not just professional relationships. So again, noticing the definition where you're saying it's like I have to create these professional relationships. That's a part of it, yes. Part of actually if you want to go to industry events and all of that. But I've also had, as a career coach at Baruch, I've also had students who have gone to Starbucks, for example, and they were very friendly with the cashier, the person behind the counter, talking to the person, and realizing that that person had a family member who worked at a big public accounting firm, and that person, the student, was actually in accounting, and got to talking and ended up forwarding her resume to that cashier, who forwarded to her uncle, and the student got the interview. So also not to think of it as just professional, it's just building relationships, and from your relationships, by you showing up as valuable, and by you showing up as somebody who people can trust, and who people actually see that that you're someone of integrity, that they're willing to recommend you for jobs. So when you're talking about it being a habit, you can actually do this as a habit. It doesn't have to be necessarily a professional thing, but how do you make it a habit to show up as someone of value? Not a habit of going out and connecting with somebody professionally every day. Like this is not something that I do on a daily basis, but also one of the things that I make it, I try to make a practice as much as possible of asking, where can I add value? And even in like a time like we are in right now, like there's so many different opportunities to add value. And also when we're adding value, that's when we feel very useful, right? So it also makes us feel good, and then we want to add more value. So Niels is saying, I like it, but finding the right people to network with is still the issue. What do you mean finding the right people to network with, Niels? So you can tell me in the chat box. And so this is what I would actually, in terms of networking, remembering that you are the valuable thing, and in many different situations you can add value. You don't have to choose to add value in certain situations, but it's where do you want to add value, and where do you have the necessary skills to add value. So networking basically is value plus visibility. You know, at the end of the day is I have to provide value and I have to be visible to the audience. And we've talked about this in the resume class and we talked about this in the interviewing class in terms of value, right? And it's like, imagine if you use an iPhone, right? If you use an iPhone, you value the iPhone and Apple is visible to you. And that's how you come to really appreciate it. If Apple existed but nobody knew of it, right? So what's the point, right? It's this valuable thing that's hidden away somewhere. So the visibility is also necessary, but also you can have visibility and not really have value. It's like, where somebody goes and talks about how great they are, but really doesn't demonstrate value that they have to offer. These two things are really important when it comes to networking. Having value. Everybody has value. So it's not your value that's in question. What is the value that you want to offer and to whom, right? So effective networking basically is having confidence in yourself. It's really owning your value. And again, we're all valuable, right? It's showing up from integrity. And this is where you show, like, if you say you're going to do something, you do it. It's also being a resourceful person. It's having genuine curiosity, right? If you're going to have a conversation with somebody, you're not just saying the things that you believe that they want to hear. You're actually being very genuine. You're being very authentic. And you're also allowing yourself to be seen, because a lot of people, they hide. They're so afraid of rejection that they don't allow themselves to be seen. And we talked a little bit about this last week when we talked about interviewing in terms of rejection in the interview process. But this is prevalent throughout the career process, where people are so afraid that if someone, if they talk to someone or if they have a conversation, go up and introduce themselves, that person is going to ignore them. And what I say is, like, if that person is ignoring you, maybe that's not somebody that you actually want to have a conversation with in the first place. That's not about you, it's about them, and not taking everything so personally. So allowing yourself to be seen is also very important. So how does this list feel to you in terms of effective networking? Is this resonating with you, or is this something that you already do? Is there something that you can do better here? What's coming up for you? Can always use more confidence. What is the challenge, Sydney, in terms of the confidence? Don't like to brag about myself. So this is a big one that I hear a lot, in terms of, if I talk about myself, people are going to think that I'm arrogant, that they're going to think that I'm bragging about myself, and they're not going to like me. So there's a difference between arrogance, and there's a difference between arrogance and confidence, right? So arrogance is if I go up to someone and say, hey, I'm Tanuja, I'm the best career coach in the world, right? It's self-serving. It's about wanting you to like me. It's about wanting you to think highly of me. It's all about me. So that's arrogance. Confidence is something that's like, where, hey, I'm a career coach, and I work with people who want to change their mindset around a career, so that they can finally take the action they want to get the results, the goal, or achieve the goals they want in their career. And having worked with thousands of students so far, the results have been amazing, where they work in in big companies in financial services and in consulting and many different industries. So if I say the first thing is like, where I'm the best career coach in the world, that's like from a perspective of, and it usually comes from insecurity. Somebody doesn't feel very secure about themselves, so they have to like build themselves up so that somebody likes them, versus the other example I gave, where it's more about, I'm sharing so that you can see how I am in service to you, or how I could be of service to you, right? It's about the other person. It's confidence is more about, I own my value and I see how I can be valuable to others. And if I don't share that with them, they will never know. So this is the visibility piece. So it's not really about bragging, because it's not really about you. It's about the other person. If I don't tell that person, they will never know how I can help them. And because of that, I owe it to them to let them know. Does that make sense, Sydney? Perfect. Awesome. So what else is coming up for you guys in terms of this list, and how does this list feel to you? Anything that feels challenging, anything that feels that it also makes it difficult? Having genuine curiosity is a good reminder. People like to have an interest. Yes, Tom, people love to talk about themselves, and a connection can flow naturally. But is it easy to fixate on your own elevator speech? I don't like the elevator speech, Tom. Because I feel it's something like people rehearse, and it sounds very, it can sound very mechanical. I personally am not a big fan of an elevator pitch. I prefer to like be in the moment and seeing, observing what's happening. And it's two parts. It's, it's the content and connection parts that we've talked about in the interview class last week. So it's going to be, is the content, of substance? So if you can have a conversation with somebody, is the content of substance? And then the other part is the connection, and the connection part is about being present. And if if you have an elevator speech, it's really about being in your head and saying something, the 30-second pitch. And I feel a lot of times it can come across as robotic. So oftentimes, when I see people make really great connection, and I have in fact, I have a student that I worked with last semester or the semester before. And it was so interesting because he went to an event, and it was actually for a public accounting firm. And at the event, they were talking about like all these opportunities in that company and all of that. And he had actually applied for a job, but they actually told him that he was not qualified for the role. And at the end of the event, it was a big event, and they all were leaving. And he actually saw two of the presenters standing there by the elevator. This has nothing to do with the elevator pitch. It just happens that they were standing there by the elevator. And he actually said, it's quite crowded here, and these elevators take a long time to come. I'm going to go to the 11th floor where there's a express elevator. And it's going to be faster to get down. And he's like, do you want to join me? So they joined him. So they walked from the 14th floor to the 11th floor. And in walking to the 14th floor and the 11th floor, they started talking, and they were asking him what he wants to do and all of that. And they asked him if he had applied for a role with their company, and he said he had applied, but he was not chosen for an interview. And then by the time they actually took the other express elevator, they asked him to send his resume, and from sending that resume, ended up getting the interview, ended up getting the job. And he would not have been able to do that if he didn't actually, it was a natural, connection. It was like he was just doing something from the goodness of his heart. He just wanted to, reach out to them to say, even though he had not been chosen for an interview, he wasn't even trying to get an interview. But it's just that somebody being of value in that moment and made an impression on them, and that resulted in, in him getting the job. So just noticing, again, value doesn't necessarily have to be like something you're giving this valuable thing in necessarily a professional sense, but it's also about how you show up. So how do you network in non-face-to-face interactions? So you're talking about LinkedIn, Peter? When you talk about non-face-to-face interactions, what specific non-face-to-face interactions? Email, LinkedIn? I find it weird when random people ask me to add them to my LinkedIn list, thus I don't feel comfortable asking. Yeah, so this is where, when you're reaching out to somebody, Peter, instead of just like if you're going to reach out on LinkedIn, You just don't want to send a request to say, hey, add me on LinkedIn. You actually want to, first of all, acknowledge the person. So if I were reaching out to you, Peter, and I would have looked through your LinkedIn profile, and I would have said, hi, Peter. I am also an alum of Baruch College, and I saw that I see that you have X number of years working in the financial services industry. I have also worked in finance once I graduated from Baruch, and I thought it would be great for us to connect. Something like that warm is like where I've acknowledged you, where I've found some common ground. Or if I were reaching out to you, Peter, to get more information, I could say, hi, Peter, I see you're also a Baruch alum, and notice that you have a career working in the healthcare field. I'm currently looking to transition into healthcare, and thought that you might be a great resource to provide me with some advice. I know you must be busy, but if this is possible, let me know. I'd really appreciate hopping on the phone with you for 15 minutes to have a conversation. Something like that, easy breezy. It's like suddenly, the person feels seen. And it's also where you're really acknowledging them, and also recognizing that they could provide value to you. So people are always willing to give advice. People also want to feel valuable in terms of offering value. People don't want to feel used, and I talk about this in one of my slides. People don't want to feel used. You're welcome, Peter. So what's confidence? And Sydney brought this up, talking about confidence. So confidence really means I trust myself. It basically means that I know that no matter what happens, I can handle the results. So it means that I'm actually putting my trust in me versus putting my trust in something outside of myself. So typically, the reason that a lot of people lack confidence is because they're putting their trust outside of themselves. So they're putting their trust in somebody else's opinion of them. So if I go up and talk to that person and they don't respond well, I feel rejected, and then I don't want to go to another networking event. It means that person's opinion matters more to me than putting myself out there. Or, for some people, they may even put their trust in a job. And, when we look at what's going on right now, for so many people, the reason that the uncertainty can be so jolting is because the things that they've put their trust in are suddenly gone, right? So they don't have that thing to hang on to. So basically, when somebody feels a lack of confidence, it's because they're putting their trust in something outside of themselves. So if you ever feel that you're not confident in an area, it's where is it that I'm putting my trust? Where is it that my trust is right now? And how can I bring that trust back to say that no matter what happens, I know that I'm going to be okay. Even if somebody, I go up to talk to somebody at a networking event and they ignore me, that's okay, right? That is not going to stop me from the getting where I want to go. That one thing is not going to throw me off, because if this thing is really important to me, I'm willing to do what it takes to make it happen. I'm willing to take all the steps, and even rejection, even dealing with people not writing me back, it's not going to stop me, because I know that I am going to make it happen. So I want to ask you a question here. It's, if you trusted yourself 100% and knew that there was nothing to lose, what would you be doing differently right now? In terms of networking, in terms of your career, what if you trusted yourself 100% and knew that there was nothing to lose? What would you do differently? Attend more events when we are allowed outside, yeah. And there are lots of, it seems that there are lots of virtual events happening as well, Sydney. Dedicate more time and effort towards networking, yeah. I would be applying to more jobs, yeah, Carlisa. So how do you learn to trust yourself more? I'd be asking people, even strangers, for informational interviews. I love it, Tom. So what would it take to trust yourself more? What is it that you need? Practice in terms of what, Sydney? In terms of talking to people at events, or so you get practice by doing it? Making small talk with random people. Mm-hmm. Positive self-talk. So one thing I would say, in terms of like even talking to people, we do it all the time, right? We have conversations with our friends, we have conversations with our family, we have conversations with our coworkers, right? All the time. What is it that makes conversations with others harder? Why is it that conversations with a professional or conversations with a stranger hard? Yes. So Gail, when you say not at as much at stake, what do you mean by that? So what is at stake? What is at stake when we go to a professional event? What is at stake when we talk to a random person? What is it that we have to lose? Yeah, so loss of opportunities, lower self-esteem. So loss of opportunity, right? So it's very interesting that you say that, because it's also costing you opportunities to not talk to strangers, right? So you're looking at, if I go up to talk to a stranger and, it's possible that that person's not going to like me, and then they're not going to want to refer me for a job. But if you're not talking to people, they're not going to do that either. So rather than looking at what is it that I stand to lose, a quite better question is, what is it costing me to not do this? What is it costing me to not have the conversation that I know that I need to have in order for me to add value? Being embarrassing, something offensive. What makes you think you'll say something offensive, Sydney? And if you say something offensive, Sydney, what is it that will happen? So also, Gail, you talk about positive self-talk, and personally, I'm not a big fan of like forced positivity. I know sometimes we we are told to be positive, I actually prefer to be realistic in terms of acknowledging the situation. But if you look, for example, at networking, it's really you showing your value, again, you acknowledging your value. So the reality of it is that I am not going in there to get something from somebody. I'm going in there to show them as well what they have to lose. I have to show them the value that they have to offer. So part of it, is really acknowledging that value. So you really owning that value, and you really believing that you're valuable. And it's real value. It's not something you're telling yourself like in a positive way, but it's actually real value. Because I feel sometimes as well, this positivity movement can be about like masking the fears that are going on. So if I feel afraid, I'm going to tell myself, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. But it's still a way of avoiding the fear and not dealing with the fear, as opposed to facing the fear, face face to face and saying that fear is there. I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of somebody, thinking that I'm not good enough for a job. I'm afraid of that. But, I am not going to let that stop me from going after what I want, because that is so important to me. And the pain of not getting what I want is actually even greater than the pain of dealing with someone rejecting me, or the pain of someone thinking that I'm not good enough. So Sydney is saying people are more sensitive and prefer to be politically correct nowadays. I don't always use acceptable terms and don't want to seem ignorant. So Sydney, here's what I say to that. Yeah, I totally get you with people being politically correct and using certain terms and all of that. But the whole point is, if you can't be yourself, why would you want to have those people around you, right? So if, for example, I say something, and I mean, if it's something that is who I am, like imagine I'm somebody who likes to curse, right? So if I'm somebody likes to use swear words, and I go somewhere, I'm using swear words, and somebody said, "Oh my God, you're a horrible human being." Well, that actually is great as well, because it means that person is not somebody that is somebody I actually want to be around. Nothing bad with that person. It's just not their choice. That's not how they speak. That's not what they like. But that's also okay. They have that. They can make that choice. But I also don't want to censor myself, and where I feel like I can't be myself because that person, prefers me to speak a certain way. It also is about context, right? Like, if I'm probably not going to speak like that. Say, for example, if I go have a talk at an organization that has a certain culture, or if I say go to maybe a startup culture, that's where I get to be more of that person who speaks freely, and perhaps acknowledging that culture, that startup culture, might be better for me versus going and working at the UN where I can't speak that way. So it also, by being yourself, you also eliminate the things that are not good for you. So not everybody is going to be good for you. Not every connection you make has to click, right? Again, I talked about dating in the interviewing class, and the same thing. Not everybody you meet is going to be your husband or wife, right? But it's also really knowing what is it that's right for you and what is it that's not right for you, right? And if you don't show up as yourself, you're just going to attract people who are not right for you. And this is why it's so important to be 100% yourself. Because also, why do you want to work in an organization where you can't be yourself, right? So I love this quote, and it says, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. So how do you think this relates to confidence, and what's your interpretation of this quote? When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. In terms of networking, find the environment where you can thrive. And in terms of career as well, Niels, find the environment in which you can thrive. So put yourself in a better networking environment. Don't change yourself. Yes, yes, yes. And this is true for a career as well, right? If I have a plant in my home and that plant isn't doing really well, it's like in a dark place, I may consider, well, maybe what a plant needs is more sunshine. It's not like I'm going to say something is wrong with the plant and I have to change that plant. But oftentimes what happens with us especially in a professional setting, because there are all of these norms around profession, like around career that we have been taught from a very young age, right? We've been told what it means to have a career, and that influences how we show up on the things that we do. And often what ends up happening is that we put ourselves in environments that are not right for us because this is what we believe that we should be doing, and we never question those environments because we think, again, this is what a career should look like. And it really means coming back and asking yourself, like, is this environment right for me? Right? Is it where I'm a fish in water, where it feels very natural? Or is it I'm a fish that's, on land and it just feels like a struggle? Because oftentimes when it feels like a struggle, when it feels hard, when it feels like, this is something that I really don't want to do, the real issue is not that there's something wrong with you. The real issue is not that, I'm an introvert. The real issue is that the environment is not, and the system you're operating in is not a system that's right for you. Yeah, so Carlisa, you have to find out what the company culture is like. And I talked about this in the class on interviewing last week. It's like, the interview is a process to really discover for yourself as well, is this the right culture? Not just to, say, give me the job. You have to ask questions and you have to really understand the company culture. But what I want you to question as well is, in terms of how you're viewing career, perhaps stepping back and seeing, like the way that you're approaching your career, is it really making you feel like you are the one that's out of place versus you are actually not necessarily in the right environment? And to start thinking of what the right environment would be for you, if you say you were a seed, right? If I were to plant a mango seed in New York, it's not going to grow very well, right? It's probably going to look around at the apple seeds and saying, wow, the apple trees, and saying, wow, look at how they're blooming, look at how many apples they're bearing, and something must be wrong with me because I am not bearing any fruits. It's like, it feels like I'm just struggling to survive in this environment. And of course it's struggling to survive because that environment is not right for it. But oftentimes we are choosing careers based on that same mindset, based on where we are told that we need to go in order to be successful, without ever questioning what success means to us. So any thoughts you have, any questions you have, please put them in the chat box. So I also want to talk about having needs versus being needy in terms of networking context. It's okay to have needs. Every human being have needs. We have basic human needs, and we have the need to self-actualize and all of that. It's not okay to be needy, right? This is networking, career, life in general. Needs is like, the need for security, the need to contribute. I will do everything in control to meet my needs because this is what an adult does, right? A child, not necessarily true. A child needs a parent or a caretaker to meet its needs. But regardless of it being a child or being an adult, we all have needs, right? Needy is when I want you to meet my needs. And it means that I'm using you as a means to an end. And this is when network gets into those murky waters. Because again, if you're just networking to get a job and you're showing up to events and you're schmoozing and all of that, it's like where people are going to feel used. And people can sense this. Like, think of yourself. Like, do you know when somebody's trying to use you, and how does that feel? And this is why so many people avoid networking, because they don't like this feeling and they don't want to impose that on somebody else as well. And that's why a lot of people, when they hear the word networking, which is another word that, has been thrown out there in the career context to say that you need to go out and meet people. But really, networking is important because so many jobs are filled through referrals. But those jobs that are filled through referrals are coming from people, are actually from people who have developed relationships, who know the people, like, my friend at Baruch who recommended me for this job. It was because we had a relationship already. It wasn't that I had, set out, had this plot in terms of how I was going to use this person to get a job. I wasn't even looking for a job. So it's the relationships that is important, and investing in those relationships, right? Not using somebody as a means to an end. And that's the difference between having needs, which is okay, but knowing that you are going to do what it takes to meet those needs, versus being needy is that I want you to meet the needs and I'm going to use you. And once I get what I want, it's like, okay, so now, I can stop networking. I can stop doing this. But that's not the case. You're always networking. This is a lifelong thing, really, right? It's building relationships. And again, it doesn't necessarily just have to be professional relationships, because you don't know from where these opportunities are going to come. And if you're just focused narrowly on, this specific person that you have to network with, you're probably missing opportunities as well. And also, once you have an agenda, it means that you're just using somebody, because you're reducing them to an object that's there for your gain, right? And it's basically, you're going to see them through the lens of that agenda. And that's what it means, like, for somebody to be seeing somebody versus using others. So people want to feel valued, like we were talking about before. When you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, is letting them know that you value them, letting them know that you see, that there's somebody who could be very resourceful. When somebody's acknowledged for who they are and they feel seen, they feel really good, right? That's when they open up. That's when they actually would want to have a conversation with you, because they want to add value. Think of this again in your own, in your own life. When somebody acknowledges you, when they see you, when they actually, acknowledge the value that you bring to the table, how do you feel? And people don't want to be used, because then they're just reduced to an object for someone else's gain, right? They just feel like they are a means to an end. And as soon as you feel like you're a means to an end, you basically are going to shut down, and you're not going to want to respond, because you don't feel seen. You're like, okay, so this person doesn't really see me. This person doesn't value me. All they want is to use me for something, and then it's like, discard me. And that doesn't feel good to anyone. So it's really important that you see other people. And seeing other people is just stepping back and realizing that this professional that you want to network with is also a husband or a wife, they're a mother, father, they're a daughter or son, they might be a tennis player, they may, like hiking, so they have a life outside of all of these things. But if you're just narrowing that person down to this is that, asset manager from whatever company, you're not really seeing that person. All you're doing is that you're seeing them through the lens of how can this person get me a job. And as soon as you do that, you've put that person into the category of I'm just using that person. And that's the big difference in terms of how networking, how networking is done versus if you do networking like really authentically and just look to connect to people genuinely. Being curious again, wanting to know them, seeing their value, really, like even when you're talking to them, honoring their time and all of that is really important. So anything that's coming up for you when I talk about this? Any advice while changing careers? In what sense, Peter? What is it that you want to know? Like here's where I think informational interviews would be really great for you to build connections, to reach out to people in the field that you want to get into, again, acknowledging them. Can you, like, so I would say make a list of people that you want to reach out to, maybe either people you already know or people that you would like to know. And one thing that you can do is even go on LinkedIn. You can go on the Baruch College page. You can, search for alums in there, and basically, and I'm going to give you all a resource at the end of this. Greg is going to share with you a resource on informational interviews, and I'll actually tell you how to conduct an informational interview in that resource. And basically what you would do is that you would reach out to that person, and just like I've said earlier, you would basically acknowledge that person. Like, again, if you're searching, say, the Baruch alums on LinkedIn, and you search, say, if you're looking for digital marketing, in New York City or whatever, so you check off New York, the greater New York City area, you type in digital marketing, it's going to bring you all the contacts who are from Baruch College working in digital marketing. You can look through all of those contacts, and you can say, okay, so this person looks like a good person that I want to reach out to. And you can, like, oh, hi, Jennifer. I see that you also graduated from Baruch. I'm an alum, having graduated in blah, blah, blah. I've worked for X number of years in so-and-so industry, and now I'm looking to transition into the digital marketing field. Seeing your background, I was very impressed, and I thought you would be able to provide me with some direction in terms of the career options I'm currently exploring. Would you have 15 minutes to hop on the phone with me sometime in the next 2 weeks? I know you're busy, so if that's not possible, that's okay as well. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing back from you. Something like that. The person may not necessarily respond, the person may respond, but the fact is like, if you're doing this, if you're sending out these emails, you're sending them from a very authentic place, from acknowledging somebody, from seeing their value, and also you're looking to get information. You're not looking for a job at all. An informational interview is not about using somebody to get a job. It's using somebody to get information. People love to give information. They love to talk about their field, and it's basically to come from that place of seeing them as valuable and to acknowledge them, as opposed to just using them. So that's the difference between these approaches. And as I said before, networking is a daily habit, right? It's a moment-to-moment choice regarding how you show up and add value. So it's not necessarily about how many events you go to this week, which is not possible, maybe virtual events, right? Right now, but it's a moment-to-moment choice regarding how you show up. What are the values you want to embody, right? And how do you want to show up? And it also means appreciating your value. And again, not from arrogance, but from confidence. It's like, I'm coming from a place of service. I want to be able to add value. And there's so many different opportunities to show up and add value. And how do you do that? Whether it's using your creativity, whether it's whatever it is. And it also requires that you have boundaries. As I was saying before, not everybody you connect with is going to be right for you, right? And knowing what your boundaries are, who are the people that you don't want, it doesn't mean those people are bad. It means just based on who you are and what you want to do. These are not the type of people that you want to connect with. Like, I always use the example of Whole Foods, in terms of this. Like, Whole Foods, they're looking to appeal to people actually who are willing to pay premium prices for premium products, right? Whole Foods doesn't want to attract the McDonald's customers. Nothing wrong with the McDonald's customers. It's just not what Whole Foods is looking to attract. Because if Whole Foods were really in alignment with its mission and its values, that's not who's within that boundary. So really being clear about who you are, and it's not rejection that the McDonald's customer doesn't align with Whole Foods. It's not rejection at all. It's just that's not their choice. That's not how they live. And that's perfectly okay with Whole Foods, because it's not looking to serve the world. It's looking to serve a select, portion of society. And it's the same with you. You're not looking to serve everybody in the world, but who is it that you want to show up for, where you're excited to talk about the topic and not, focus so much on, is somebody going to think what I said dumb, right? Or is somebody not going to like me because of, the way I dress? It's that knowing that the thing the topic or the field that you're going into is something that you really care about, and that you're going to show up because of that, because you have to get it out, because you have to be visible, because you have to add value. So that's going to be really important. And this is something that, it's more about how you show up right, than what's happening on the outside and how other people are reacting, because you have no control over that. And again, if you're placing your trust in that, in how people are showing up, that's where you're going to feel that you lack confidence, because you are going to feel like, you know, very unstable. Because if somebody tells you that you did a great job, then you're going to feel good. And if somebody says, oh, you know, your conversation skills are not great, then you're going to feel bad. But I mean, you know, if somebody tells you your conversation skills are bad, and you don't like the topics you're talking about, maybe that's not the right person for you, you know, simply put. So what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for as a person who deeply cares, who is curious, wants to connect, interested in learning, wants to be of service, or as someone who only shows up when you need something like a job, looking to take, and comes from lack, right? And for most people, networking falls in the second category based on how networking has been taught, because it has been taught as this, you know, this like process where you show up and you go into performance mode, and you're, you know, you're basically saying things that people want to hear. But it's also where you're really not being true to yourself. When you do that, you end up rejecting yourself, and you end up taking on jobs and even a career that may not necessarily be right for you, as opposed to if you were actually true to yourself, show up as yourself, and recognize that not everyone is going to resonate with you, and that's perfectly okay. You know, your job is to find your audience and really, you know, deliver value to that audience. So 2 ways you can approach your career, right? From lack, I need a job, or from contribution, I want to add value. And this is, you know, for most people, in terms of looking for a job, it's coming from lack, because they're placing value on the job itself, right? The job is the valuable thing, and this is where they're going to compromise themselves, and this is where they're going to look to, you know, how do I say things a certain way so somebody is going to be interested in me, and like all of that. From contribution is that your value is never in question. I know that I'm valuable. I know that, you know, I actually can have an impact, and I'm coming in to share from that space, right? That's not, it's never a question of whether you're valuable or not, right? It's how do I make sure that I'm visible and to let people know that I can add value, because if they don't know that I exist, I can't get to share this. I can't get to make the impact that I want. So recognizing your value, and it also means acknowledging that value, right? So if you had to acknowledge your value, what would it be? What is the valuable thing that you can offer others? Or if you trusted yourself fully, what is the thing? You know, if you trusted yourself fully, and knew that no matter what happened, that you are going to be okay, where is it that you would choose to add value? What is it that you would do? So type that in the chat box. If you had no fear of rejection, no fear of failure, wasn't worried about the unknown, you trusted yourself fully, and knew that no matter what happened, you're going to be okay, where would you choose to add value? I think I would be more myself instead of trying to be what I think is expected. And who is more, when you are more of yourself, Gail, who are you and what would you do differently? Bring enthusiasm for what I'm passionate. What are you passionate about, Niels? Feeding the hungry. Is that something that you do now, Niels? As a volunteer, want to work in my career. Okay. So if you trusted yourself fully and knew that you could, you could, you were not afraid of failure, rejection, the unknown, what is it that you would do differently in your career? I would take on more leadership roles and responsibility. Mm-hmm. And what stops you from doing that, Sydney? What's the fear behind that? And Niels, also, what's preventing you from doing that as a career? Is anyone else in terms of what you would do? And I want you like to also think of what's behind, like what's the motivation behind that, in terms of that you would want your, like for example, Niels, that you would want to have a career feeding the hungry. Why is that important to you? And answer that question for yourself. So networking in times like these, so obviously we are in very uncertain times right now, and it's also a good time to network. It's a good time to add value. There's so many different ways to add value, right? By reaching out to your contacts to see how they're doing, and doing that from a really genuine place. So just reaching out, right? Even writing down a list of everybody who is in your list of contacts and checking in with them. And also seeing like where you can add value and where you want to add value at this time, and who can you ask for advice, like even at a time like this, like are there people that you can reach out to for advice, where you're making them feel valued, where you're seeing them, where you're acknowledging what they can bring. So there are many opportunities here to network. Like right now I'm networking as well, like putting myself out there. This is part of being visible, right? It's, this is something that I really care about, changing people's mindset around career. It's something that, I want to get out into the world. And, to do that, I have to be visible. And this is a way of doing that. And this is networking, because it's like, how can I provide value to someone, to someone who can benefit from this. And this is also networking. So it doesn't have to be like I'm going to a professional development event and talking about what I do and all of that, and it's just putting myself out there without expecting anything in return. I do it because for me the fulfillment comes from the work. The fulfillment comes from doing this. Like I come off of a call like this and I'm like, I'm on a high, right, when I'm doing this. And in the last 2 weeks or so, I've done probably about 8 webinars, and I'm really enjoying this. And to see people have a shift in terms of the way they see things and all of that. So this is my way of networking. And adding value. So it comes back to what you were saying earlier, Gail, in terms of being an introvert, right? It's like, what is your way of, it can be one-to-one. It's like, how do you add value to one person at a time? It doesn't have to be a group of people in a room that you're not comfortable, talking to those people. So how can you find your flavor of value and the way that feels good to you based on your style, and do it? And whatever works for you. For me, it has taken a while for me to get to this point, like where I discover I can just be myself. And I also realize that my style doesn't work for everyone, and that's totally okay. I'm not expecting the way that what I say and you know, my message to resonate with everyone. That's perfectly fine. There are lots of great coaches out there who, you know, based on their messages, work for other people as well, and that's fine. But for me, I know specifically that you know, I want people to shift the way that they see career, where they can come from a place where they really you know, get to be true to themselves and put themselves in an environment where they thrive, as opposed to being in environments where they have to change themselves and feel like something is wrong with them. And do it your way, basically. Do it the way that you want to do. So needless to say, I'm currently a graphic designer. I'm at Brook to get a degree in nonprofit management, to have the personal skills to offer. And why do you need a degree, Niels? Why is it that you know, this is something? What does a degree give you that you can't do now? Because it's also sometimes where, you know, we procrastinate and we say you know, I need more skills, or I need more time, or I'm, you know, some people, you know, say I'm too old, I'm too young. But why is it that you can't make the impact you want without having that degree, or while you're getting that degree? So when networking is effortless, right? So I want to talk a little bit about this. Networking, so let me just go to Neil's comment. It seems to be a requirement for management level roles in larger organizations. So Niels, what is it that you can do right now, even without the degree, right, that would make you feel that you're adding value in this area, in terms of, you know, feeding the hungry? And also, why is feeding the hungry so important to you? Why is that specific cause so important to you? What is it, what need is being met by doing that? Is it a need for contribution? Like, why is that something that you feel that you're passionate about? Or why is that something that you're really passionate about, that you want to do it? Volunteering, which I do now, I know what it feels like to be in need, and everybody should have enough to eat. So it's something that's close to your heart. So you're getting that fulfillment. Do you feel fulfilled when you're volunteering? Like, what's missing that you have to make a full career out of this? Why isn't volunteering enough? And it seems that you want to get into a management position in a nonprofit, want to make an impact on a higher level. And again, why is that important to you? So I know I'm like digging a little deep, but I want you to get to like the source of this. Like, why is this important to you, that you make that impact on a higher level? What is that going to give you? If you had that, what would that give you? It's just some little coaching that I want to So if you want to have a conversation around this as well, Niels, we can get an audio and talk a little bit more about this, because I think it would be great to get some coaching around this, to see. So put my full potential towards the cause. Are you okay with getting an audio and video to chat about, because we have some time as well, about this, Niels?
Sure.
Okay, there you go.
Perfect.
All right, so tell me a little bit about this. So right now you're a graphics designer?
Yes.
Yeah, and your goal is to work in an organization to feed the hungry?
Yes.
And that's not something you can do right now, you feel?
Well, I'm involved in a couple of organizations here in Columbus, and I believe that they have the potential to do significantly more than what they currently do. but I also recognize that I don't know how to take them there, which is why I'm going to school to try to understand how to do that.
And so what are things that you recognize that they could do better right now?
Well, they're serving part of the need that they're trying to address, but they're not able to to leverage their message and their big hearts into fully realizing the impact that they can have. So they're helping, several hundred people where they really probably could be helping several thousand if there was more structure to it, if there was a better management to it. And that's what I'm trying to help bring.
So if you were in a management position, what is it that you would do differently in that organization to feed several thousand people?
Right. So bring a different, some systemness to it, I guess. It's a lot of big hearts trying to do the right thing, but it just doesn't have the professional structure and the professional approach to fundraising and to service delivery that I think it could have.
And if there was one small recommendation that you could make in terms of this changing the system, what would it be?
Work on getting a more functional board. Because that's always a big concern in smaller nonprofits is attracting a board that really gets it and wants to work on the cause with you.
And this is an organization you're currently volunteering for, right? This is the organization you're volunteering for. So what's stopping you from making that suggestion to somebody?
Nothing's really stopping me from making the suggestion. I guess where I'm coming from is that I don't feel I have the tools to understand and properly create the board that I would like to see.
But in terms of like systems and all of that, like you can, and outside of the degree, right? Like right now, would you be able to meet with somebody to talk about this and to see like, okay, what are the options and all of that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So who would you talk to?
Well, I guess I would want to try to find people that are doing it at that higher level of professionalism that I'm talking about, and see what kind of insights they would have that would be useful. And I guess whatever I could offer them in return. I'm not quite sure of that part, which is in terms of your coaching, No, I
don't think you have to offer anything in return. I think if you can recognize them as valuable, like they're people who are looking to help others, like they want to feed others. And I think recognizing the work that they're doing and saying, I really appreciate what you're doing and I recognize the size of the audience that you're serving. And now that I'm volunteering this organization, I feel that there's so much more people that could be served. I was wondering if you could share your experience with your model, so that we could start adopting some of those systems to have a greater impact. Again, you're just valuing the person, recognizing that person, and so is that something that you're willing to do, to reach out to finding some of those people and reaching out to them in the next week?
Yeah.
So how does that feel?
It feels fine. I'm not afraid of doing that. I just, I guess, my whole thing is just that I guess I feel that my credibility as a graphic designer in the space is not quite.
So that's the problem. So the problem is you questioning your credibility. So what are these people going to think about you, that you're a graphics designer?
Right. Yeah.
So what are they going to think about you? What is the fear?
Well, I in terms of what we've talked about today, I need to bring my passion for it to the table and explain that I'm not fully there yet, but that's what I'm working on. Right.
But what's the fear?
It's in part a fear of rejection. It's a fear of not reaching the right people, not coming across as serious about what I'm doing. Those kinds of concerns.
Yeah, so that's basically because you're saying, because I'm a graphics designer right now, that they're not going to take me seriously.
Right.
And now what you're doing is projecting that onto those people. So now those people, when you're going to talk to them, you're imagining that they're not going to take you seriously. So that's when you're going to come from fear. So you're going to have the conversation basically from fear, the small part of you who is like, oh my God, you know, they really are not going to value me. And the reason that you're doing that, Niels, is because you're focusing so much on yourself. You're focusing on how you look versus putting your focus on all the people, the thousands of people that you could actually serve by having this conversation.
I could get out of my own way. Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine if you didn't worry about how these people think, because it's not about you. It's like, I am going to show up and ask as many people about, you know, about how they've been able to have a model where they're feeding thousands of people, because I want to be able to feed thousands of people. And if I'm not doing that, there are thousands of people who are going without meals on a daily basis. And this is why I show up.
Yep, I hear you.
Okay, so it's not about you. So take the focus off of you, and because then you're operating from that fear. It's basically the Niels who is afraid is coming into the conversation versus the Niels who is committed to feeding thousands of people.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I like to control my environment, I guess, is part of what happens as well, right? So it's part of where I'm coming from, that I like to have some idea what's going to happen to me when I go into a situation, and I have to put that aside. I understand that's what you're saying here.
Yeah, because that again is fear. It's the you know, wanting certainty, and you're basically putting the certainty on, you know, this person is going to like me and share with me all of these things. Well, that's not, you know, but the certainty is that I am going to find a system to feed thousands of people, and I'm going to do what it takes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So get to it. All right. Great talking to you on this, about this.
I have a nice comment from Sydney there. Yeah.
Yeah, Sydney saying graphic designers are super valuable nowadays. Yeah, I was thinking that, Sydney, because I was thinking that, you know, there's probably even a lot that he could do on social media to share, you know, even pictures and what's going on, maybe to attract people and to this cause. Since people don't like to read and love visual things. Yeah. So Sydney had some good feedback for you there, Niels.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, so let me just, so when is networking effortless, right? Networking becomes effortless when you find something that matters to you so much that you're willing to sacrifice yourself for it, right? So it's like, just like I was talking to Niels just now about, you know, not putting the focus on how he's going to look, because when you're afraid of rejection and what people think of you, basically what you're focusing on is self-preservation. And our career model in the Western world happens to be on self-preservation and how can we accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. So, you know, how can I get the job that pays me the most money? How can I get the status so people, you know, think I'm successful? How can I get the nice house? How can I, you know, do all of these things and accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And it's about how do I do things to make myself, you know, even better. But if we look at another model, that is usually the model that Eastern cultures follow. It's more about it's more about self-sacrifice. It's, in this life that I have, how do I use myself fully for something that I believe in and provide value, you know, in order to serve others. And in providing value, that's how I make money. You know, people pay me for the value that I provide, but it means that I have to really use myself for that. And when you find something like that, right, networking will not be a problem, because if it's about, I want to end homelessness, my cause is that I want to end, hunger in this world, right, and nothing is going to stop me from doing that, because it's so important that people are fed, then it's not about you. it's how can I be this vessel that's being used for this thing? And regardless of what other people say, and regardless of, you know, that I reach out to people and they never hear back, and the failures and, you know, the challenges that I face, and regardless of the uncertainty, that this is something that I cannot not do. And because of that, I am willing to put myself out there. I'm willing to provide value. I'm willing to make myself visible, because this is a cause that I believe in. And when you find that thing, networking will never be a problem, because this is where the seed has found the environment, right? That's right for it. And the seed is going to bloom. The seed is not thinking there's something wrong with me, right? The seed knows, like, you know, for an acorn to reach its potential and be an oak tree, it has to be in that right environment. And when you're in that place, and again, it's really being true to yourself. And, you know, we talked about, like, if you trusted yourself fully and you really did the things that you really want to do, and know that no matter what happened, that you're going to be okay, you know, what would you do? And, you know, I know some of you said you'll be yourself fully. And, you know, be yourself fully, because that, when you actually acknowledge what is it that matters to you from that space, then you're going to be committed to it. The reason that networking feels hard is because we do things that we believe that we're supposed to do, and we follow a system that's not necessarily right for us, and we try to find formulas. Because honestly, if you go and you Google networking, you'll probably find millions and millions of articles on how to make small talk, and how to, you know, what to say at a networking event, and how to follow up at a networking event. But even with all of those articles, so many people still have, you know, have challenges when it comes to networking. And it's just because of the way they're approaching networking, where it's being used as a means to an end. And, you know, what is it that stops you from doing what matters most to you? What is it that gets in the way of doing what matters to you? And we saw from the example when I spoke to Niels just now, it's, you know, it's the fear. It's him, you know, telling himself that, well, people are not going to take me seriously. So focusing more on the self-preservation, it's I have to, you know, make sure no one rejects me, versus, you know, thinking of that thing that it's worth sacrificing yourself for. So what stops you from doing what matters most to you? And I want to share with you another quote. And this quote gets attributed to Einstein, but I really don't know if Einstein said it, but I think it's a great quote nevertheless. It says, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. So everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. What resonates with you about this quote? Does anything strike you about it? It's one of my favorite quotes. And how does this relate to you? So what comes up for you when you see this quote? It does not have the capability. Yeah, so the fish doesn't have the capability, but what comes up personally for you when you know, when you will think it's inadequate? Yeah, so something is wrong with me. Learning to know my own value. Yeah. Yeah, need to find the right path for yourself in order to excel. Yeah, and not just blindly following a path. And this is something that, you know, a lot of us do, you know, and for some people they do it until the end of their life, where they've followed a path, you know, and never realizing that they're in a system. you know, and it comes back to like a fish in water, right? A fish is born in water. It never questions water. You ask a fish, what is water? Probably doesn't know what water is, because that's what it is in. And for many of us, we've been swimming in the system, and we are conditioned by the system, and we never question it. And to start to step out, because where the disconnect comes in, and where it starts to feel like, you know, it's unfulfilling, and where networking starts to feel hard, and where interviewing starts to feel hard, and where, you know, putting a resume together where you're putting your message into the world feels hard, it's because you're doing something that doesn't really resonate with you. Because if you did something that really matters to you, you know, you're going to want to put that message out there. You're going to want to feed thousands and thousands of people, and you're going to do what it takes to make it happen. So it's, you know, finding your genius, that space where, and putting yourself in the right environment to make it happen, and looking at where is it that you want to add value, and on a daily basis, you know, finding opportunities to do this, to connect with people, to, you know, to be yourself, have the conversations you want to have, like all of those things. And that's what it is to develop this as a habit, right? As well as opposed to operating from that place of fear. So Tom is saying it becomes a pretty personal question about who you really are and what you are most committed to, pretty much what you've just been saying. Yeah. So that's, I think that's, you know, for me, I feel personally that's the most important thing that I can do. Like, what is that thing that I'm really committed to, that I'm willing to dedicate my life to? And it doesn't have to be one thing. It could actually be, you know, like for me, it shows up in many different flavors. Like this is one way that it can show up. You know, and I do other things as well. Like even cooking for me is a way that I get to show up, you know, using my creativity, and also where I feel like I can get to connect with people over food and all of that. And it's an area that I feel very confident, where when I'm cooking, I never feel that I can mess up. I never feel I can get it wrong. You know, I'm always in that zone where failure is not even an option, or even somebody not liking my food. I'm like, oh, well, I guess they don't like, you know, vegan food or whatever. I'm not vegan, but it's not, I never question that the problem must be with me. So it's like, if you're questioning that there must be something wrong with you, you might want to take a look around and see if it's the environment, because remember, we don't fix the plant, we fix the environment. So that's what I wanted to say on networking. And, you know, in terms of if you want to like connect with professionals as well, what I would say is make a list of people who are already in your list of connections. Now is a good time to reach out to them. And, you know, if you want to like get information about different fields, informational interviews is the way to go. You know, the easiest way that you can find those people via LinkedIn. And if it's you know, an area that Baruch alums are working in, certainly go on LinkedIn, look for Baruch College. And when Baruch College comes up on the site, you'll see alumni. Click on the alumni link, and then it brings you to another page where you can filter based on fields, based on location, based on you know, other things. And you can look at those people and see who it is that you want to connect with. And you do informational interviews, and you'll have the guide in terms of how to connect, what to talk about, like all of that stuff that I'm going to share with you. So if you have any questions, we're right at the 8:30 mark. If you have any questions, let me know. But it was a pleasure, you know, doing this series with all of you. And I also want to hear about, you know, hear from you. Let me know how things are going.
And Tanuja, I've put in the chat bar the link to the informational
Awesome.
interview that you have there. So you can feel free to check that out, everybody, on that link. I'll send that also after the event as well as a follow-up. Thank you so much, Tanuja. If anybody has any questions, please, we still have a few minutes, so feel free to ask some questions and we'll get to them. These questions, though, you know, I love the approach you have, Tanuja, and this whole series have been a lot of questions of why, you know, getting to the root cause of a lot of why people believe certain things and have certain preconceived ideas about aspects of their job search. And it's always it's different, like we were saying, they're personal questions, they're difficult questions too, you know, but you know, it's good to ask those questions to ourselves. Sometimes we don't think about the motivations behind why we think certain ways.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, and a lot of times, I think what people are doing is that they're treating symptoms in their career. You know, it's like, I have to find a job because this is how I make money. And again, putting the value on the job, putting the value on the money. Whereas, like for me, you know, it's like I'm getting paid because I'm providing a valuable service to students, or seeing it from that perspective. It's not that they're just paying me because, you know, Baruch is there to meet my need. It's like I look at Baruch is there to meet students' need, but they're hiring me because I provide value. And because I provide value, that's why they're paying me. So not, you know, we tend to put the value on the thing outside of us, right? Could I go somewhere else and make money? Yes. Like I can go, you know, either to another college, you know, business, whatever, I can make money because I am the valuable thing. And it really comes down to recognizing that value that you have to offer, not discounting it, because we tend, and that's when it gets into neediness. It's like, if I, you know, Baruch is the only place that I can go for this valuable thing, then it's like, no, I have to hold on to that for my dear life. And I have to do everything, you know, I have to be who my boss wants me to be. And I have to say everything, you know, that they want to hear or whatever. And I can't, you know, I can't veer from what people have done in the past. Whereas for me, it's like, okay, so how can I do more creative content? How can I show up fully? How can I grow? How can I, you know, because it's like, I'm excited to do these things. And I think when you're coming from that place of really valuing, you know, valuing the thing that you have to offer, the skills and all of that, and also recognizing that there are people out there who are being denied that service if I'm not visible and if I don't show up. And I think recognizing that, like when Neil's like, there are thousands of people who can benefit from what you have to offer.
We have a question from Carlisa here, which says, what advice do you have for those searching for jobs and seeking networking connections during this time when many are working from home and companies are freezing hires? How do you find the right tone in reaching out?
Yeah, so Carlisa, if it's somebody in your network already, somebody you already know, I think it's just by reaching out and touching base and seeing how they're doing. I think if it's somebody that you don't know, you know, possibly a way to connect is by reaching out for advice, you know, reaching out from that place of advice, you know, recognizing, again, coming from that place of recognizing them. You know, hi, Greg, you know, I was looking through my contacts on LinkedIn, and your profile popped up. And again, you can talk about how I was very impressed about blah, blah, blah. You know, given the times that we are in right now, and I was wondering if you had any advice in terms of how to break into the blah, blah, blah industry kind of a thing. Again, you're asking just for advice. You're asking, you know, you're recognizing their value and what they have to offer. So I think if you're coming from, you know, from a point of view of this is a totally new connection, using like informational interviews could be a good way to go in terms of reaching out. Again, recognizing that not everybody's going to get back to you, but that's okay, right? That's not on you, that's on them. So that's something that you can actually look to do. So Niels, you said you're going to school at Baruch? Yeah, so Niels, there's which school are you part of? Are you part of the Marks? So Marks, is it Suzanne Greg?
Suzanne Grossman?
Suzanne Grossman. There's a career center, Suzanne Grossman. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I specifically with Baruch, I work with the Zicklin School of Business, and we work with alums. And are you also an alum of Baruch from before? Did you have a degree from Baruch before? Yes, from Zicklin?
Not for undergrad.
Okay. Yeah, so typically Suzanne's career center serves students from Marks.
We'll be doing some more webinars in the near future, and that's actually a nice segue. I wanted to just let you guys know that we are going to be doing some more webinars in the near future. I know Tanuja and I are going to plan out a few more in the next few weeks. And we've also got a alumni marketing panel on April 20th. If any of you guys work in the marketing or advertising space, we're going to be doing a panel discussion on Zoom. There are also some STAR Career Development Center career webinars that are free, including ones about creating a career portfolio and salary negotiation. Those are going to be April 23rd and May 7th. And we'll send you more details about this as we create the registrations for them. We're sort of taking everything online to Zoom, so we'll have those RSVP links ready for you guys shortly. And I wanted to thank everybody for your participation in this webinar series. Really appreciated everyone's engagement. You guys were great participants. I think that this was some really fantastic stuff. Thank you, Tanuja. I'm gonna give a applause reaction on Zoom here.
I didn't know that existed.
It does, it does. And we didn't get Zoom bombed this entire time, three times, yes. Yes, thank you, Peter. Thank you guys, really appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up with me. I'll also send you guys a follow-up after this. Yes, yeah. Tanuja? Yeah.
No, any feedback, any testimonials, any, if you want others, you know, other topics for us to cover, let us know. Like we
exactly. And if there are any topics you guys would like us to explore with future webinars, please feel free to let me know, because at this point right now, because we can't do any in-person events, we are all about webinars. And so we're happy to start scheduling some more over the next few weeks. So if you have any topics that are particularly of interest to you, let us know, and we definitely could explore those.
And we're also just one thing that you may like, Niels, and I think the rest of you as well. We're looking to take the money that we raise from this to donate to students in need, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the money that was spent on these the series is going to go towards students who are facing challenges with COVID-19. So it's going to be, yes, it's going to be well spent. So thank you guys again for your participation and for being here. Thank you, Tanuja, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Take care.